welcome back to another edition of Songs of the Ozarks, a project of the Ozark Studies Institute, an ongoing initiative of the Missouri State University Libraries. My name is Emalee Flatness-Combs, and today's date is February 16th, 2024, and today we are in the home of Randle and Jaynie Chowning in Springfield, Missouri, and that just happens to be who our special guests are today as well. And first is Mr. Randle Chowning. Thank you so much for meeting with me today.
You're welcome.
And so, of course, my first question is, are you from the Ozarks originally?
Yes, I'm from Howell County, Missouri.
Really?
A little town called Mountain View,
Really?
which is northeast of West Plains, which is the county seat. So I'm kind of from the heart of the Ozarks, I guess you might say.
Lovely. Did you have ancestors or relatives that played music in Howell County?
I had an uncle that played harmonica, and I asked him, he was quite good, and I asked him one day, I said, well, now, can you give me some, because I was starting to try to teach myself how to do this, and I said, well, can you give me some advice on how you do the harmonica? And he goes, and he played a song like Little Red Wing, the old song, and he played it really good, and I said, wow, that's great, and I said, can you give me some advice? And so he says, well, you know, some notes you suck and some notes you blow. That was it. That was all the instruction I got. I mean, I was like, well, I kind of already knew that. But I'll tell you what, my uncles on my father's side of the family, being pretty much hillbilly oriented, their instructions are brief. They'll show you how to shoot a rifle or a .22, but they don't want you to be. They want you to be good, but not real good, because then you're competing with them. So
Right.
their instructions are very brief.
Well, it turned out really well.
Well, I had to do it on my own anyway. So.
And Howell County, I bet it was relatively rural.
Well, yes, but here's the deal. What was different for me was my father was a radio man in World War II, and he was in North Africa with General Patton. And when he came home, he opened up a radio TV shop. And so for the time, we had all the high tech you could get. And he put up this huge antenna on our house outside, just on the edge of town. We were up on a little hill, and he put up this huge antenna and pointed it towards Memphis, Tennessee. So we got Memphis television and radio really good. And so I was exposed to all this stuff that was really urban, and yet I was surrounded by, first time I heard black music, my brother dialed it in from Memphis.
Wow.
And it kind of scared me, because he was 7 years older than me, and we shared a room together, and he's listening to this music, and the first time I heard I think it was doo-wop, actually.
Wow.
From Memphis, it's kind of scared me, because the way they would do their backgrounds, the ooh, ooh, and ahs and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm going, what is this music? Because I didn't hear it anywhere in the daytime.
Yes.
I was hearing, in the daytime, I was hearing Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley on the jukebox, and stuff like that, and a lot of country and stuff. But the other thing is, that relates to my dad's TV and radio, was my mother could be a part of the record club that they had, because he was a dealer, a salesman, had sales and service. So she got all these Frank Sinatra, Glenn Miller, then she had Hank Williams records. She had this smorgasbord of music then they would just send it because it was part of the record club. And they used to, I don't know if you, they used to have them up until, what, the 60s,
Really?
I think, where you join the record club from like, say, Capitol Records. And they would send you all their releases for a reduced fee if you're part of a member of this club. So,
Okay.
yeah. And so they discontinued that. Probably by 70s, that was gone.
I think
But
I'd
it-
like to be a part of a record
But
club.
it would be Columbia Record Club. You're a member of the Columbia Record Club. And of course, they have diverse artists. So they just send you this catalog, whether you liked jazz or folk or country, you just get all this stuff. So
Wow.
my mother just got all this stuff and she liked it all. And she also sang. And I think that's where because I was her audience of one a lot when I was growing up. And she just sang like a bird in the kitchen. She'd be doing dishes and she was on pitch. And the one that got me when I was about 4 was Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And we just, I would sit there in front of the record player. I don't know why they didn't send me off to some orphanage because I would listen to the same song over and over and over for an hour. Then I'd go on to another one for an hour. So, and sometimes it was country, sometimes it was Glenn Miller Band.
Really?
Oh yeah, sure. I really liked the Glenn Miller Band.
Yeah.
I didn't want to play horns later, and still don't like horns for some reason. I guess I got over it, saturated. You can do it. I mean,
You can.
I did that later with Hank Williams Sr.
Really?
Hank Williams Sr. can sound really kind of, I don't know what the word is, funky, I guess, and kind of simplistic and kind of non-cool, I guess, when you're listening to it out of the time period. But then I had to kind of force myself a little bit. But then once I started listening to him, I could not stop listening to him, and I did that for about a year. I bought all the records that I could find of Hank Williams Sr., listened to everything from Your Cheating Heart to Set in the Woods on Fire, all these, and it was great. And then I haven't hardly since.
Yeah.
Too
much.
I just overloaded. I binged on it.
Yeah.
And more a contemporary guy that I binged on for a while, to her big chagrin. I'm pointing at my significant other, my best bud. Anyway, was Van Morrison. I about drove her crazy listening to Van Morrison.
Really?
Yeah. And,
I've never heard him.
Well,
Really?
I don't know. You just develop a taste
Yeah.
for these people, and then once I again got into that, but he's about the only contemporary person that I've really listened to, and that's been years ago
Yeah.
now. But anyway, back to the hillbilly thing. It's in your core,
Yes.
but there are different levels. I used to joke. I used to say, well, Missouri hillbillies are a lot more sophisticated than Arkansas hillbillies.
I like that.
Well, then I said that, it's a joke. And I said, always Missouri hillbillies are more sophisticated than Arkansas hillbillies. Well, I was just joking one day, and this guy was a producer in Nashville. And he goes, I'm not going to repeat what he said, but he said, I'm from Arkansas.
Oh.
So I said, relax, that's a joke. No, he was not amused.
Oh dear.
Anyway.
Who would have thunk it?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no.
You need
So.
We can do this in one question.
Was there a lot of live music around here?
No, unfortunately there wasn't.
Oh man.
But we moved here in 1959.
Really?
And so, my dad, well, that was before satellites, and he knew that was going to be a great thing for television and clear signal from outer space because it's line of sight, and if anything, so anyway, the old days in the TV business, if you were in the wrong area, you just couldn't get it, and so. Like I say, we were like one of the few. Some of his other customers got it. It just depended on. But we're down in Howell County, Missouri, in the 50s, so a lot of them didn't get good reception, and so until satellite technology, and so anyhow, he wasn't a good businessman, but he knew technology, and unfortunately, he didn't capitalize a lot on it, but he ended up being an electrical engineer here in town, and so it was here actually. Ozark Jubilee was still going on when we moved here, and we went to that show a couple of times. I could say I was in the audience a couple of times at the Ozark Jubilee, which was amazing. And at the time, Slim Wilson was leading the band, and I couldn't look at anybody else. I didn't care what was going on stage. At that time, they had Slim and the band down on the left-hand side. It was kind of like an orchestra pit, but they weren't out of sight. You could see them. And Slim had on, he was leading the band, and he had on a pair of headphones so he could tell how to cue everything. And I thought, this guy is the greatest. And he was, you know, a lot of people thought, oh, Slim blinks his eyes too much, you know, or he's too hokey country. But Slim was an excellent musician.
Wow. Excellent.
And at any rate, that's one of my first things that I was so impressed with. And then, like I say, once the black music and the kind of raw guttural blues influence and old rock and roll gets into you, there's no escaping.
Really?
It's infectious, you know. Some people can do it and others can't. So it's just I don't know. It's kind of you're born with the ability to rock and roll or feel it or not. I'm close, maybe. I don't know if I'm all the way there. It's you know, deep rhythms are hard to maintain.
Really?
Yeah, when you boil it down, all music, no matter what, is clock. It's the clock. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and how good you keep time at a basic level. Then you go from there. Can you sing on pitch? Can you sing with expression? And you go from there. How good can you play into that beat? And some people, when you get a group of people, especially black musicians, when you get a group of people that are real sensitive to how much you can embellish and play into a rhythm, it's amazing. And it's hit and miss. It's like taking the dice, boom, but when you get the right combination, and that was one thing about the Daredevils. We had a little feel, I guess you would say, where we sounded together. We weren't always perfect on time, but we were always pretty tight together, as they say. Musicians say it's tight or loose. And my brother said, you got to get loose before you get tight.
Did your brother play?
A little bit, yeah. He was more of a party guy. He wrote Spanish for us for a while, and kind of kept us in good humor, you might say. Because, you know, songwriters, I'd say the biggest flaw of songwriters is they will take themselves too seriously.
Oh.
Yeah. And, you know, and they get kind of sensitive and, shall we say, out of sorts sometimes. And so he'd keep the humor going,
Oh.
and kind of everybody would have a good laugh and go on. So
And your brother was Rusty?
Rusty, yeah, Kenneth was his real name.
Oh, okay. Did you have any other siblings?
No, I did not.
Rusty and Randle.
Yeah, and he was 7 years older than me.
Right.
So, yeah, that was unfortunate. I wish I would have been closer in age, but like I say, he was already getting into smoking cigarettes and listening to black doo-wop.
Oh, yes.
And I was like in second grade.
Oh.
Yeah. But, I'm glad about the time period that I lived in because I remember before Elvis and what it was like. And I'll tell you, when Elvis came out, it was like when the Beatles came out, or I don't know if there's a modern day equivalent, but you had this huge backlash of going, oh, no, you shouldn't be listening to that. And then the Beatles was the same backlash. Older people were going, you shouldn't do that. And they may be right. I don't know that rock and roll's good for you, actually.
Really?
If you can handle it and retire in one piece, I'm all for it. That's what I wanted to do.
What did your folks think of rock and roll?
Well, because they were into music and all that, it was actually my mother that wanted to tune in the Beatles. She had read about it, heard about it, and was curious and wanted to tune them in the first time they were on Ed Sullivan.
You had a cool mom.
Other than that, we probably wouldn't have watched it. That was before I like everybody else, I liked the Beatles, and I liked the British Invasion. But by that time, I was already into, I really, and I still do, I love blues, and a lot of my early playing was derivative of the blues, and I was listening to, in high school, I was listening to John Lee Hooker. Even before that, I love Muddy Waters. And so when, it reminds me of when they had the tragedy up there at Camp, well, I guess it wasn't, it was the Kansas City thing down at Union Station. And I asked my best bud, I said, you want to go out there for the parade? And it was, no kidding, it was, Monday. This is the day after Valentine's, or is it? No, 2 days after Valentine's today. Anyway, I said, you want to go out there? Because I love Union Station. So in the early 70s, when the Daredevils first started going to Kansas City, Muddy Waters was playing all week long in Union Station. Yeah, it's pretty well. So what the great thing in my view, and I'll stick with it forever. In the '60s, late '50s, mid '60s, late '60s, you had all these people still active, like that were icons in their genres. They're all out there still working. Okay, you had Bill Monroe. I saw Bill Monroe. The first year they opened up Opryland at Fanfare. I saw B.B. King. I saw George Jones with Ray Charles. I saw, who else did I see that's an icon? Somebody else that I can't think of right now. But the point being is you had all these people. You still had Frank Sinatra making records. And you had Tony Bennett in his prime in the 60s. There's others. George Jones, for instance.
Yeah.
He's not even reached his peak at that time in the 60s. So when that's when I really started getting real serious about music, was probably mid 60s.
Really?
In high school. I had been before. I'd been dabbling in learning how to play in, say, 6th grade. But I struggled along. My dad liked steel guitar, and that didn't help me out. I wanted to play regular guitar.
Yeah.
This was before the Beatles. It was folk music was going on and
Yeah.
stuff. But that time period is so rich that I don't think there'll ever be another period like it. And
Wow.
records were being made, not tapes or CDs or MP3s or that. You had these records. And they had nice covers, you know, and that was a treat. It was,
Yeah.
and like I say, my mother being part of a record club, I think that was through the Motorola television company with one of the record labels, or maybe more than one. They had this deal, and so she got all these diverse records, and it just reflected that time period. Then you had the advent of Elvis, Jerry Lee. I saw Jerry Lee a couple of times, Jerry Lee Lewis. So you had all of that. You had the first wave of the white rock and rollers, I'll
Yes.
say. And all the other genres in their prime. And it was a highlight for me to see Bill Monroe. I think that was probably 75.
Wow.
June of 75. We were actually recording our third album in Nashville. And by that time, unfortunately, the band we were not in the habit anymore of working up songs together.
Mm.
So we were going in the studio and doing things that nobody had ever, somebody bringing a song that none of the rest of us had ever played on, which is unfortunate, but that's what, you end up kind of doing that.
Yeah.
And a lot of bands anyway. And there was an afternoon that I had nothing to do during the process. And I knew Bill Monroe was out at Fanfare, what they call Fanfare now. It's CMA week or something,
Okay.
where the fans come to Nashville for a whole week and see everybody in country music almost. And that's a big deal. And they get souvenirs and they get autographs and they get to meet. And it's pretty cool. And they used to call it Fanfare. And so Bill was out there, and I'll never forget it. It was just, a wonderful experience and a great time, like I say, and I don't see that now.
Yeah.
It hasn't been that way, since a lot of them died.
Yeah. That's true.
But, times change, and that's the way it goes, so.
Did bluegrass shape your music?
I really got into it again. Bill Monroe's another one. Like I had my George Jones period. I had my Van Morrison period. But no, Bill Monroe. Then there was. I probably listened to Bill Monroe again more than a year. Learned some of the songs. I picked up mandolin for a while. And thought I got up to speed. It takes a while if you're playing. What I liked was old fiddle tunes, and transposing those to mandolin, and I got to where I could what we will call average tempo for most. Some of them play some of these people really bad, and but I got up to speed, we'll say, and I almost slept with the mandolin for a couple of years.
Wow.
And it's kind of like guitar. For me anyway, you reach a plateau, and then it becomes harder to advance unless you're really naturally gifted.
Mm-hmm.
And so as far as a guitar player, lead guitar reached a plateau probably about 1978, and then I expanded a little bit in other areas like finger picking and like I say, I don't think you can be too good at your time or rhythm, so I got better at that.
What kind of jams and musical communities were around town whenever you first started playing?
Very little.
Really?
Yeah. thing about here is you had high school bands. That what I mean by that is high school kids that had bands. They would play at high school functions. Back then, you had live music at your graduation. They even had high school sororities. I don't know about fraternities so much.
Yeah.
Did they have them?
Acorns.
Acorn. Well,
Acorns?
yeah, and she and I both went to Glendale here in town.
Okay.
And yeah, so they would have these dances themselves that were not a part of Valentine's Day or whatever. So there was a lot of these, and they paid, and that doesn't even touch the fraternities and sororities on the college level. So if you were a good enough high school band to entertain college kids and high school kids, that was your venues. Now, there was a radical departure from that. There were a lot of those bands that did that. And so either you were in a band that did that or you weren't doing anything, maybe occasionally playing a private party. Then you graduated into the clubs.
Okay.
Now, the clubs is kind of like, in a sense, musically going into the Army, because the fraternity gigs, sorority gigs, or anything else, graduation, blah, 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 prom, homecomings, all music back then. Now they're just DJ or maybe nothing. I don't know, because I haven't been to a prom.
Mine was a DJ.
Well, yeah, they went to DJs probably in the 80s,
Oh, okay.
late 80s, because, well, anyway, for a lot of reasons. And, I understand. I don't blame them. But anyway, so there was a lot of work if you did that. But the club work, when we started, there were probably 4 in town. And they were usually, those gigs were already taken usually by somebody a little older and more hardcore, if you will, because I know you play clubs. Club gigs aren't as hard as they used to be. Not that you don't do a good job of it. Now, what we had to do was from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and we did 4 45-minute sets
Oh my god.
with 3 15-minute breaks. And it paid well, but we did that 6 nights a week.
Wow.
And so when you graduate, I say graduate, when you advance into, we felt like the attitude was, oh, he's got a club gig. He plays with that band that does that club gig. It's like, that's put you up on a different level.
Yeah.
And it's considered more of a pro level. Brutal. It is brutal. It's not for old people. It's not really for young people either. And then also the other thing was, gosh, until recently they smoked heavily in those clubs. So you'd be,
Oh yeah. Yes.
And people will send you drinks,
Yeah.
and you don't want to offend them.
Yeah.
So somebody has to drink this stuff. You got to be sociable.
Yeah. Amen. Your best bud was shaking her head. You only have 3 15-minute breaks though, so you got to be careful about not drinking too much.
Well, that's the other thing. That's where you become professional. There was a black guy being interviewed about one of the old blues singers, and he said, it's the only business where, he said, this business is where drugs and alcohol are occupational hazards. Yeah. It is. And it's also considered part. I mean, people just go, oh yeah, well, yeah.
It's normal.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
That's what. So then, so it's excused a lot.
Yeah.
And also even aided and abetted.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I had an opportunity, the band had an opportunity, the Daredevils had great opportunity to go to Hollywood. We had a record label in Hollywood. I love getting checks from Hollywood and deposit them in a bank in Springfield.
Yes.
And so I had the opportunity after I left the band to go out there. And, you know, I look back on it and I think, wow, what would have become of it? But that's, you know, you have these moments, you have these opportunities, windows, and I chose not to do it because I think, you know, I would fallen prey to the darker side.
Yeah.
And because it's so easy to do. And
Yes.
and in Hollywood, they support anything. Encourage. And so not only would the record company have sheltered me, anything I wanted to do, they'd be fine with, would help me. Wow. I'm telling you, they'd be fine with. They wouldn't call me up and say, "Hey, Randle, you know, you didn't go to blah 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 and do heroin tonight, did you? Why not? You know, or we, you know, what? How come you're not doing more to make news? You know, whatever." Nothing like that.
Yeah.
But they didn't care.
Yeah.
They didn't care, and they would give you money, and you know. So hillbilly with money in Hollywood, huh? I thought, I don't know. It's probably not good for me.
Yeah. What was your first band? When did you first start picking with a band?
In high school, I finally learned out which notes go out and come in on harmonica. And,
which to second, which to fourth.
But I played harmonica and sang. I didn't play guitar. Well, right toward the end of high school, I was playing guitar in a band. But we were, we did a few. I'm trying to think now. We actually did one little club that was a teenage club on the west side of town. The building's still there.
Oh, fun.
And it was called the Dragon Inn. Yeah.
What was the name of the band?
We called ourselves the Night Riders.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, we bought matching shirts and pants one time. Yeah, but we played a battle of the bands and won.
Really?
And our name was on the radio and advertising, and yeah, we were, you know.
What kind of music?
Oh, we did all the. Funny thing about in the '60s, a lot of local dance bands, you would call them,
Yeah.
because that's what you were playing for. A lot of us would play the same songs, which is you go what?
Yeah.
And so the crowds would be exposed to these different bands, and the bands after a while would go, oh, they like to dance to this, like
Yeah.
Midnight Hour and Otis Redding, Midnight Hour, yeah. Lot of black covers.
Mm-hmm.
Walking the Dog, if you ever heard of that, that's a great song. Memphis music.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's Memphis, which should have been the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Should have been in Memphis.
Really?
But Cleveland, I think, put up more money.
Oh.
And Alan Freed, the DJ that played a lot of rock and roll, was based in Cleveland. So,
Okay.
but Memphis is where it all comes from.
Yeah.
Really, the players.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so we, once again, in Memphis, and later Motown was real popular for dances here. And we did that. We did some Paul Revere and the Raiders songs.
Okay.
Rolling Stones, you know. I don't think we were very good.
You won
But
Battle of the Bands.
well, yeah, we were enthusiastic.
Oh, that's...
So what we may have lacked in talent, we made up for in our excitement and our, yeah, we're into this. Yeah, well, here we go.
That's good. I think I'm that same way. Always excited.
Well, you need to be, because sometimes where you end up is not very exciting.
Yes.
So if there's no excitement out in front of you, the excitement has to be
You're
up here.
still excited, yes.
You know, and that's why it's fun if you find a group of people that you have fun playing with.
Yes.
And that are not that serious, and they want to be good, but they understand what's going on, and that you got to make, the band has to make itself happy.
Yeah.
If that happens, everybody, it doesn't matter if it's 2 people or 50,000 out there. If the band's playing good together and having fun, then any audience is going to appreciate it.
Yes,
So,
they'll have fun.
and
too.
I'll tell you, you'd be surprised how many very well-known bands that sell our records, write a lot of good songs and whatever, don't have fun when they go play.
Yeah.
They don't have fun. They look at it like, oh, we
gotta play.
got to do this. So it's a blue collar job.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a sophisticated job, and it never will be.
Yeah.
It's pop music. It's rock and roll. It's not symphonic. You can blend it with it. You know, I like doing that. I love strings.
Mm-hmm.
I got away from horns. For some reason. Well, I always think of cars. You know.
Oh yeah. Me.
You know, and they're exciting and all that, but I just, like I say, I used to love Glenn Miller, but I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. I haven't. Excuse me. I don't think I've listened to it since.
Really?
Oh, I used to. They had a song that they did called Pennsylvania 65000.
Yeah.
Is that the White House or?
It's 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's the White House.
Well,
So it's close.
I don't know what Pennsylvania 65000 would be. Maybe it's a hotel.
Maybe. That sounds pretty snazzy.
Anyway, and in the mood and all these Glenn. I just listened to these things. Loved it.
Yeah.
And Benny Goodman, the clarinet player, unbelievably good jazz.
Really?
And I was crazy about that stuff as a kid, but I just abandoned it like a ripped up shirt. I went through genres. No, I did. And I'm still. Maybe I should have landed somewhere, but I couldn't. I write blues songs. I write country songs. I write folky type songs.
Yeah.
I write mountain kind of songs.
Mm-hmm.
I write
Bluegrassy.
and some rock and roll type of songs. Some what you would call just classic pop rock kind of songs.
Yeah.
And as a writer, I think most writers like to do that, but it's not the best idea in the world. It's satisfying in the process. You go, oh, that's different, and I got away from that. Now I'm doing this and whatever, but as far as marketing or as a band, they're going, what do you guys really do, you know? What are you experts at? Well, we're experts at diversity.
Yeah.
Doesn't work so well necessarily.
When did you first start writing music?
Oh gosh, I always wanted to make up stuff. I had an imagination that would not stop as a kid, and I think that's part of it. But quit that. I can scratch my chin. I don't have a goatee, but I'm thinking. Anyway, no, probably. Oh gosh, the year would have been 1966. But I'd been about 16.
Wow.
And it was at the period when we had it was a neighborhood band. I was in high school with all these guys, and garage bands, they used to call them, and maybe still do. And so it was about that time.
Really?
Yeah, I was 16 or so.
Did you do any of them in the Night Riders?
I don't know if I do remember we learned one, and I can't remember if we ever played. I assume we did.
Yeah.
You know, that's the other thing. When nobody wanted to hear anything original back then, unless you were already a star. I mean, and especially in this part of the country,
Yeah.
and it's kind of still that way.
Yeah.
And it's understandable. They want to hear what they're familiar with, or the so-called cover songs.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Daredevils, we had a hard time finding work, even in '72. And so if we hadn't gone to Kansas City and got booked by them, there was just no place to play original music, because they wanted top 40, because that's what people going out to clubs wanted to hear or dance to. Was stuff that was already recorded. So we had no place to go except just piecemeal here or there, and until we went to Kansas City and got a manager, and they put us out on a college, Midwestern college route.
Which you went to college right here in Springfield, didn't you?
Yes, I did. In the fall of 1968, I went to what was then called SMS. It was probably, oh gosh, it's 2/3 larger now than it was then.
Wow.
The newest building was Craig Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's the way it's grown since then is unimaginable. Really.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Did you ever do any music classes?
I did music appreciation.
Really?
And I gotta tell you, I didn't enjoy it.
Really?
Any formal type of music training that I ever approached didn't work.
Yeah.
It just didn't work, and it's hard. I mean, I understand if you want to be a music teacher or whatever, or you want to be in the orchestra, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. But it's not what I was interested in.
Yeah.
I was always interested in writing songs, and there's no classes for that. So I just, everything went from listening to other people that were on records, some listening to live performance, but most of my influence was from listening to pre-recorded stuff. I listened to Bob Dylan some, all the West Coast bands in the late 60s. You gotta remember, I'm still in high school till spring of '68. And during '67, when all the so-called Summer of Love was happening, as a high school kid, I wanted to run away and go to San Francisco and be in a band, try to get in a band.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I didn't.
Yeah.
Because at 17, in San Francisco, trying to stay alive, and moreover trying to fit into a band would have been pretty much impossible. I was not ready. And so I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot, when I was at MSU, as you call it now, I was not a good student in high school. And I definitely wanted to get my 4 years, all of my 4 years, because Vietnam was really, that was the worst year, '68 was Vietnam. So I just didn't see, if it would have been something that I would have really believed in, it wouldn't have bothered me. I think I would have, my dad was a good soldier. I think I could have been a good soldier. But I couldn't quite understand what it was all about, and still don't. Any rate, enough politics, but no, I was gonna. So I had to study. I didn't go out during the week. I'd go out maybe Friday night. When I say go out, get with high school friends or college friends. And generally, we were just having drinking parties or beer parties, and not very wild at that. And then, so I had to be disciplined. And I got my first good electric guitar, Gibson, somewhere in there.
Wow.
I'd had a couple of good ones before, but I got a really good one in there somewhere. And so I would go home every evening after class and set a book on one knee and a guitar on the other. And I would, when I got bored with studies, I'd play a little while. So I devoted about 50-50, 5 nights a week to guitar and assignments. And by the time I got to about third year in college, I was playing pretty good guitar, actually.
Wow.
I mean, good enough to be play lead guitar in a club band. So I went from harmonica and singing in about 6 years to lead guitar and some harmonica. You know, they're such a drag to have to mess with.
Really?
Well, you know, you have to stick it in your mouth.
Oh.
It's kind of gross, actually.
Right now I'm thinking about all the hillbillies that used to chew tobacco.
Oh, God.
What would they do?
I'll tell you, microphones. Microphones back when people would be, if you ever went into a club, sometimes they'd have all that in the club.
Yeah.
You want to put a screen over or something because
Yes.
you'd have people that had been in there prior that were smokers and whatever, so microphones would be brown.
Oh no.
So
That is like us girls wear lipstick.
Well,
and then
well, the first thing you want to do is buy a microphone
yeah.
and take it with you everywhere.
Yes. Bring your own.
No, those clubs, I tell you, they make you or break you. You can either you can handle it or you can't. And it's kind of like the guys that become really successful bands. They go out and they work and they stay out as much as possible. And it is for young people mainly because you can become crabby in a heartbeat when you get out there. After about a month, you start to get really touchy. Because, I mean, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, that's a fabulous lifestyle. You never have to cook. You just go out, you know, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's also, you're away, you're on the other side of it. I felt like, the first time we went to Seattle, felt like England to me. It seemed so far away and different.
Oh yeah.
And it's wonderful up there, but it seems so, and it is. It's very different than here.
Yes.
And England was actually more like the Ozarks than Seattle.
Really?
Yes, to me, anyway, you know. But, so you have to be able, and a young person can do that, but even a lot of young people can't do it.
Yeah.
A lot of young people can't handle going and playing clubs.
Yeah.
And now they don't hardly, it's so different now. I mean, there was never an opening band in a club on a weekend.
Yeah.
So now you'll have some, or it got to be this way, where you have 3 bands or 4 on a weekend. One band would come in, play for an hour and a half, then another one, that was unheard of when we were doing that kind of stuff. It's like, what? You could, well, first off, a club owner would never do that. He would go, we're not having 2 bands in here one night. I don't like one band in here. You know, I'm just having to, you know, put up with this.
Right.
So anyway, it's different. It's very different now.
What year did the Daredevils start forming?
Okay, it was late Actually, late 71,
Okay.
right before Christmas.
Okay. Were you
Probably-
out of college? You weren't out of college yet.
No, I wasn't. And I took the bass player. He was over on campus and conspicuous because he was one of the few people that had shoulder-length hair.
Oh.
And I was responsible for giving him rides when we first got together. But it was late 71, and Larry Lee, the drummer, who wrote Jackie Blue, by the way,
Yes.
he unbelievably was not working. He was not in a band at the time. And as a matter of fact, none of us were, except me.
Really?
I was in a club band that we played in Joplin the summer previously. Wow. And it was one of those 9 to 1, 6 nights a week. And at any rate, that's a whole other story. But I knew that Larry Lee and John Dillon, who primarily did rhythm guitar in the band, I knew that those two guys were songwriters, or trying to be. And because I had heard bits and pieces of their original music. So knowing that Larry was free, I approached him and played him some tapes I had, cassettes that I had of some pretty raw recordings, but I thought they were better than they were. And because he wasn't doing anything, just on a whim, he agreed to get together. And then I think that was enough to get John Dillon to show up. He had been kind of distant and not interested. I'd talked to him prior and met him briefly before that. But basically, the three of us really didn't know each other. And it was the three of us that sat down the first time with just acoustic guitars in a circle, John, Larry, and myself. And immediately when we had harmonies together, it was like, okay, this harmony has something special about it. And it still does. I mean, once it's there, it's always there. And without those two guys, I mean, I've sang harmonies and with other people that are very impressive, but it doesn't have the allure or whatever that formula, if you will, like put it in a chemistry bottle. Well, it is. A lot of it, whatever that is. Now, we don't get along as people that good, but when we harmonize, you know, it's kind of like our own little Ozark version of Crosby, Stills, and Nash or something. Not that we're anywhere near that good, but we opened some gigs for the Eagles. We were on stage with them a few times, and from the very get-go, those guys sounded bigger than life, loud. Their harmonies were unbelievable. Our harmonies were softer, and I like to think it made people tend to want to get closer.
Oh, yeah.
And get up really close to it because it wasn't so aggressive and strong, but charming in its own way. And it's, you know, it's unfortunate we didn't do it more, but maybe I'm the reason for that. But my main problem and why I left so early on was they wouldn't tour.
Oh.
And they've toured, but never for a length of time.
Okay.
And so it was like less than 2 weeks generally, and then we would come home for a while, then go back out, and that hardly anybody does it that way. It's very difficult to do it that way because you're never really quite into a groove. You come back home, you start to get into that environment, and boom, well, we got to go back out. And then right at the time where you're getting, or for me, when I was feeling comfortable and really ready to spend a month. It's time to come back home. I go, oh, I was just feeling really at home here, you know.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard. I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
But you know, you have to be comfortable out there in periodic and intermittent playing doesn't work for me. I need to be fairly regular at it.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between, you can sit around all day, and as a musician you may know this, but for me anyway, I could sit around and play all day.
Mm-hmm.
But it's different when you get in front of people.
So different.
It's like drill. I compare it to the army again. Oh, you can drill. Then there's combat.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh, now you're faced with it. Now, and you can freeze or you can get on with it. And so I think it's more playing and less rehearsing, because playing is rehearsing.
Yeah.
And it's really rehearsing with
yeah.
a crowd and feedback and instant. It's hot,
Yeah.
so to speak, where rehearsal's always kind of, and it's fun, can be a lot of fun,
Yeah.
but it's always cold. So
Yeah. Nothing else can really emulate.
that's
actual
my
performance.
personal deal at any rate. So that was why there was so much opportunity there, and I wanted to see more songs get out, and the only way you can do that is have hit records and sell more records. Now, the only way you can sell more records is to be out there more in front of people and developing, especially in those days, developing relationships with local DJs
Ooh.
and becoming more or less friends with the guy in Cleveland. And don't, if you've got an opportunity to go out and talk on the radio or play on the radio, do all, you're obligated, or you should do all those things.
Yeah.
And as a group of songwriters, we weren't necessarily, and now I'm going to try to defend them now that no, but we weren't necessarily oriented to be performers. The thing is, if you have success, you have to conquer the monster that is being an entertainer. Okay, now that can be a monster. There's several ways you can be an entertainer. You don't have to dance or dress up like a clown, but you're obligated to entertain in some way or another, and you have to face that. You can't just go, oh, we're just this group of songwriters, and this being rock stars or entertainers is not our, well, it may not be, but you have to address it.
Yeah.
So that makes a big difference. The ones that are willing to go to the battle, I guess you might say,
Oh.
and
Battle of the Bands.
are willing to address having to be entertainers, are going to be your. Now, not everybody does that. I mean, the Eagles, they didn't say much. This one there sounded like unbelievably
Wow.
good. So there. I mean, like I say, you don't have to. There's different ways to address what being an entertainer is. But the difference in the Eagles is they got to do these high-level tours for like 60 days. You don't do. You don't do 2 weeks. Once you're out there, you're working, and that's how you do it. So, or you can be like Kiss, and they went out there too, but their form of entertainment is all this visual stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be any number of bands on this street right now that can sound better than Kiss. They're not a good band, but they did the entertainment thing.
Yeah.
A show.
A show, yeah. Stick their tongues out. What places were perhaps the most different from the Ozarks that you've played?
In this country?
Oh, anywhere.
Well, anywhere. Probably would be. It'd probably be towns that are different. We had a lot of receptive audiences. I would say New Orleans might be one
Oh.
because it's or Texas in general.
Oh, really?
Austin, because they're music centers and their music, Texas music is very introverted, if you will.
Okay.
I mean, if you're a Texan and you're a good musician, you don't have to leave the state. It's
Okay.
self-supportive. It's
Yes.
a self-supportive music industry in Texas. And it may mean clubs, may
Yeah.
not mean really big stuff, but they support, they're self-sustaining, if you will. And so when you go into that area, you are in a kind of a foreign musical land
Yeah.
that is unique to them. It doesn't mean Texas audiences can't be very receptive,
Okay.
but they're harder. New York is another one.
Really?
They're a little more harder to win over, if you will.
Okay.
But New Orleans, great place to play. I love it. I love going there. Loved it, especially back then. It's got its own incredible music. So when you come in there, you're like foreign music to the venue, right?
Yes.
To the area. And it's not necessarily bad, but you feel that.
Mhm.
You feel like you're an invasionary force.
Yeah.
Right? And Texas is that way too. And I wish we would have won. I say won over. We played Texas a bit, but I bet they haven't. There's, as you would know, the band's still out there, and it's in the current shape. And I don't think the band's played Texas for 40 years.
Really?
No, and that's because we didn't win
Yeah.
Texas.
Yeah.
We never broke in. They say break into the market. That's
Oh,
what
okay.
that's what the old radio people would say. Well, did you break into this market? Did you break into the Chicago market? Chicago's another market that we never quite broke into.
Okay.
So it's important. See, that's where the touring thing is. You go, okay, they don't like us that much in Chicago, so what are we going to do? Not avoid it. You go, okay, we're gonna make sure that we win over
Yeah.
Chicago.
It's
Okay.
like a.
It's only Chicago, right? we don't go, we don't need them. No, you do need them. It'd be nice, So, I mean, for me, of course it's money. I wanted a big, farm.
Mm.
I wanted to have crops.
Yeah.
Of course, I wasn't going to stay all day on the tractor, but I wanted that. So I wanted to make money to do that because I wanted to have my own farm in the country.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
Just to get away from everything.
Yeah.
So that was my goal, is like, and just getting songs. I wanted songs, and I still do want to get songs out there.
Yeah.
And that was the real fun part of it in the beginning. Is we had 3 different people, and then later Steve Cash was he started bringing in some things, and so we had like almost 4 songwriters right off the bat. So that there's a good side to that. There's a bad side to that.
Okay.
You have 4 different singers.
Mm-hmm.
So your focus is not focused.
Spread.
So some people like this guy, some people like that guy.
Okay.
The record company can't say, well, the lead singer is.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually them.
Yeah.
So, marketing, you do have to focus, like I say, focus for marketing. You have to focus for a show of some sorts. Doesn't have to be elaborate or work a lot. I mean, just as an aside, like Alabama, for instance, when they first started out and started getting a big audience, the minute that they finished, they would run out the back door of the building and run to the front and thank people and shake hands.
That's lovely.
Like a preacher would do after a sermon.
Yeah.
That is the way you work.
Yeah.
That's the way you do it.
Oh, that's lovely.
And so they were probably Alabama outworked any rock band ever dreamed because they were working all the time.
Yeah.
And that's why Alabama, nice guys, but their songs are, what they did is fine, but come on. It's not Grammy stuff, really, even though they won CMAs, but, the songs aren't that great. And they didn't write them. They
Really?
Yeah, they could have picked anything. They wrote some of them, but anyway, so I'm building them up, tearing them down. I have a tendency to do that, but I do that to myself.
Yeah. You mentioned London, or maybe it was just England, was like the Ozarks.
Oh, well, I'll tell you, a lot of English cultures, Ozark culture is derivative from English culture. You mentioned where I did just when you, we did a so-called European tour. The one that was really bizarre in that whole thing was Paris.
Really?
Yeah, because Paris, even more so than other places in the world, they're so quick to adopt what might be the cutting edge, say if it's punk rock, where they're right on the pinnacle of what's next. We gotta be part of it. Right?
Okay.
So here's this hillbilly band playing this club. Now that we're in this club, because we couldn't get a bigger venue in Paris at the time. In this club in Paris, there were probably only a dozen people, and they were dressed in what would become disco attire.
Really?
That is high lift shoes, all that. They were already, they were absorbing what was going to be disco years before it was there.
Wow.
And they had no connection. I don't even know why it was even booked. I guess we had gotten some airplay there. The record company had an English subsidiary of the label, and they had their own artists that they could book in England. And I guess, somehow, but it was the strangest thing. And they kind of sat there and just were in a kind of a bewildered state. They just kind of looked at us, and we kind of looked at them and played our thing and went, what are we doing here? It was fun to go to Paris.
Yeah.
But this wasn't the Daredevils, this was later down in Kane's Ballroom down in Tulsa.
Okay.
We opened up, I had my own band, and when I had a record deal with A&M, and we opened up for Bobby Blue Bland, which is a black singer, and it was an all-black audience. And that was a strange experience.
Really?
Yeah. That was about as strange. They were nobody was unkind, and there was 2 or 3 gals. One of the guys I had in the band was a great entertainer, great voice, and he sang some blues tunes, and they were just giggling, But here's the thing. So they enjoyed it,
Yeah.
that part of what we did.
Mm-hmm.
But we would play a song, stop, and be,
Dead silent.
and they just look at us. I'm serious.
That's weird.
I was serious. Now that was in 78 or 9.
Okay.
And, you know, things like that won't happen now
Mm-hmm.
for a number of reasons, but they were there to see their guy.
Mm-hmm.
And what's this, who are these guys? Who are these white boys? And, well, you know, they were kind of like Paris going on, what does this mean for us? You know, what do you do? So it didn't always work, but
Yeah.
most of the time it did. Anyway. That's where you got to be a trooper, you know.
Yeah.
And you got to, if you're not having fun in those situations, then the whole thing is like everybody's like, ugh.
Right.
So you gotta help each other out in
Yeah.
those situations.
Yeah. What year did you leave the Daredevils?
Which time?
Oh.
You get your own interview.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's just your
interview's
best
coming up.
buddy.
Your interview's coming
You
up.
can edit this part out.
Your voice is sounding a whole lot better right now, so your
Because I haven't been talking.
good. Okay. When I left. Early '76.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was about 4 years, 5 years?
Yeah, I was there for about 4 or 5 years in the beginning, in the first 3 albums. Part of my background vocals and guitar on the 4th album.
Okay.
We had started that in Nashville. But, you know, I would have been thrilled if they would have gone on. And, you know, the Doobie Brothers lost their lead singer and lead guitar player and went on and had a bunch of hits
Really?
with their keyboard player
Okay.
that they brought into the band.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have been thrilled if they'd have gone on. I just, you know, one thing about the other thing, other than the lack of touring, I keep going back to the Army, but the Army used to say,
Oh.
the Army used to have a slogan, be all you can be.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever saw it, but
I have.
it was a be all that you can be. Well, that's what rock and roll and pop, that's your challenge. Be all you can be. Well, everybody should be that.
Yeah.
If you're hammering nails, be the best guy that, nobody hammers nails anymore, do they? Well, maybe some. They have a gun, nail gun.
Yeah, that's true.
I can't use any of my old standby stuff.
Oh.
Anyway. Yeah, well, no, that's when it was, and the thing, what I was going to say, other than the lack of touring, is it's hard to get a lot of song when you've got 4 people. Back then, you only had 10 songs a record, and that's because the quality. The more grooves you put in the vinyl, the less the quality is. So each side had to be limited to 20. I think at the longest 22 minutes.
Wow.
So that's why you had a lot of 3-minute songs,
Yeah.
or you had a whole side that was one song, somehow we would do that. Or you had a double album. We never had, when I was there was no talk of a double album.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been nice if we would have done that,
Mm-hmm.
because you got 4 people wanting to do 5 songs each.
Yeah.
That's how many extra songs. You're only going to have 10.
Mm-hmm.
And you got 4 people with 5 or more songs that they want to do. So you got 2 albums. Every time you go in there, you got each guy wanting, you've got 2 albums worth of stuff.
Yeah.
That's probably, some of it may not be that great, but probably a lot of it is.
Yeah.
And then you have beautiful accidents like Jackie Blue. He was just developing it on piano, and when we were doing the second album, we were on break, and he was sat down, and Larry I'm talking about. And that's the other thing about Larry Lee. He played acoustic guitar and he played piano too, by ear. Taught himself both by ear. And so you had a drummer in the band that wrote songs on the piano and played acoustic guitar. So he would sometimes walk out and do that.
Okay.
So he's sitting there playing Jacket Blue on the piano, and our producer heard it, and just the structure of the song, maybe Larry was humming it or something, caught his ear, and he goes, what is that? You know, because it is very catchy, just in its raw form. And so it had, if Larry had not sat down and on a break in the recording process, it wasn't scheduled. We didn't know the song very well. No, I don't think we'd ever played it. It was brand new, and that becomes pressure when you're working up a song under pressure, whereas you're working it up over here out in the country, nobody's around. You know what I'm saying? Now you're in the recording process. And strangely enough, the Rolling Stones record that way. They'll go in with nothing and write a song and record it over a 1 or 2 day process. And when he told us that, our producer Glenn, English guy, he said, "Well, the Stones, you know, they write in the studio." We went, "They write in the studio?" Because we're used to the clock being in there, you know, and going and have everything rehearsed.
Sounds expensive.
You know, it's expensive. Well, the Stones, you know, that's the way they.
Wow.
It was crazy, but so that was the way Jacket Blue was. So we built it up. We built up the musical part of it, and layered it up, and then took it out to the West Coast, to Sunset Sound, and put on the vocal and guitar, the lead guitar and the lead vocal. Unfortunately, so Larry and I both were under the gun to get this, and to this day I hate my solo on that thing.
What?
Well, because I was so stiff. Well, it's out of tune for one thing.
Really?
You know, maybe the solo's not so bad, it's out of tune. But there is a video where we're playing in England a couple of years later, and my solo's in tune.
Wow.
So I got 1 out of 2. But
Is it on YouTube?
Cool. Yeah, it's called the Old Grey Whistle Test.
Oh, let's all look that up.
At any rate, anyhow, that it's no fun when you're in there and everybody's sitting around looking at you, and you've got to be creative and figure this out, and you just barely know the song.
Yeah.
You're learning the song.
Yeah.
In the process.
Wow.
That's hard to deal with. That's why people get on drugs and alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
To just ignore all that.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. Okay. You know, that you can forget. Actually, there were times that this was at home. And once again, our producer said, and I'm not promoting drugs and alcohol. I guess I'm promoting alcohol. No. Ignore that. Kids, don't try this at home.
Oh my goodness.
No, there were times when you can get in a zone, so to speak, with a little help from your friends. And I would be recording at home, forget that the machine was on.
Really?
Yeah, when you can do that, and that's what Glenn said about Keith Richards. He goes, he doesn't pay any attention to whether the recording machine's on. He doesn't even know if it's on. He's not paying any attention to that.
Yeah.
And subsequently, sometimes he goes to sleep when it's on.
I guess that's...
Seriously. But he doesn't. And if you can free yourself or put yourself, you don't have to you do yoga, do whatever. If you can put yourself where you're fully concentrating on the music or you're performing of the music, you're going to play so much better. You're going to play like you do when you're sitting around on the back porch.
Yeah.
And it's hard to replicate that when you've got people looking down your throat. You have to learn how to deal with that.
Right.
And when you do, it's automatically that you become a better entertainer.
Wow.
It's not rocket science, but it is kind of tricky.
Yeah.
And so you're working against two radical influences. You'll have a crowd, in other words, that may be going crazy, which we had some that were louder than we were, like
Whoa.
the Beatles. No kidding. And you have to be able not to fall apart when that's going on.
Yeah.
And so there's a trickiness to it. It's a mind game. Mind game is like KC football. I mean, those guys, what's so great about them, one of the things, they're talented, but the other is they never think they're going to lose. They're going to play to win. If they've only got 1 minute, they'll go, we can do it, we can do it.
Yeah.
Then they do.
They did.
A lot of times. Most of the times they will. So it's a lot of it is right here.
Yeah.
And you combine, if you've got your head together and you've got mediocre talent, sorry, Kiss, sorry, Alabama, sorry, Katy Perry, sorry, I could throw them all under the bus. What they do have, though, is their heads together and they work hard.
Yeah.
What a concept.
Yeah.
What a concept.
And great entertainment.
Well, you know, Katy Perry fans love Katy Perry. And they well should. They have that right. They have that right.
I have got a question that's a little silly. You mentioned earlier, before we turned the camera on, that you worked in Branson for a little bit.
Well, yeah, I worked at Silver. Well, no, I didn't work at Silver City. I started to, but actually, I did work at a place down there for a summer.
Really?
As a sound guy.
Really?
And it was the Ozark Mountain Amphitheater.
Okay.
And it was in business somewhere in the late 80s to, it's probably only open about 3 years.
Really?
Yeah. And that was right before Jaynie and I think got together right after that.
No, because you were in Nashville when we got it.
Well, I was going back and forth. Yeah. But at any rate, no, it was bizarre.
Yeah.
In that this particular amphitheater was kind of like a Swiss Villa used to be, or black.
Really?
What do they call it? Black Oak Amphitheater later, or something.
Oh, okay.
But the guy that did the amphitheater then didn't know what he was doing as a promoter, so he was having acts in every weekend.
Wow.
And he was having acts on Friday nights.
Okay.
And on Saturday nights, and sometimes 2 acts. But so you had every week you had a headliner Friday night, a headliner Saturday night. Well, anybody in concert promotion, you've got to put more than a month between events.
Okay.
And the main reason for that is you got to advertise it. Yeah. And the second reason is you don't put too many concerts together in a row because they compete against one another.
Oh,
People
okay.
go, oh, well, I want to see Reba. I don't want to see, whoever.
Yeah.
He had everybody, which was great. He had George Jones, he had Waylon Jennings, he had a lot of people.
Oh, that's
Reba, and so it was fun.
Yeah.
But he couldn't sustain that. I told him, I said, anybody told you you're overbooked?
Yeah.
And he says, well, we've got to keep up our obligations. And it was like he kind of got taken advantage of.
Oh, man.
But at any rate, that it was on one of the outer roads. I can't forget, can't remember now where it was, but
Okay.
it's now a business location. The old amphitheater's told it to it, but it was probably 80. I'm gonna say maybe 88,
Okay.
maybe. I'd have to look that up.
What do you think of Branson? Like the culture of it and.
Well, when we kind of grew up when it wasn't there,
Right.
and so it's kind of puzzling for. I thought, I understood why it got to a certain level,
Mhm.
but then when it really expanded, because we're close to it and we grew up with it.
Yeah.
When Jaynie and I grew up, there was a Phillips 66 station out there on a corner that goes down where the road goes to the dam. First off, the dam wasn't there until '59,
Wow.
so there was no lake.
Yeah.
Taneycomo was there. It's an old lake. And it was a tourist place before it started with the Shepherd of the Hills book and that whole thing. So there was tourism, but not anywhere near what it developed into. So and it became a godsend for a lot of Springfield musicians
Oh.
because, like I say, the club scene is not the best
Yeah. It's tough.
to work, no matter how good this. It can only be so good.
Yeah.
And so when that changed, people we used to make a pretty decent living.
Yeah.
A paycheck that you could live on working clubs.
Yeah.
And now maybe they give the band $50 here in town in Springfield and expect you to have a cover charge or whatever, and it's so different than it was. So a lot of musicians here found great work in Branson and retired from there.
Wow.
So I thought, after a certain, and then when it expanded, really expanded past its initial growth period, I was astounded. And I don't know where it's going to, it's either got to go to more of a kid-oriented place, which it seems to be going towards, or eventually gambling, I would say. Well, if Arkansas puts in gambling down at Gateway, is it Gateway? No, not Gateway. What is that little town? There's a little bitty truck stop
Okay.
right on the border of Arkansas.
Okay.
Now that's only about 30 miles, maybe less than 30 miles from Top of the Rock or Dogwood Canyon.
Okay.
Because they were right down on the Arkansas line. So they're gonna hate it if Arkansas passes gambling, because you're gonna have gambling really close.
Oh yeah.
And people will just go, "Ugh," or they'll go down there, but they won't spend as much money. And there was a big deal. You remember Boxcar Willie?
Yes.
Okay, Boxcar did really well in Branson.
Certainly.
And when they built the Shepherd of the Hills Expressway, all the Branson guys in Boxcar Willie were up in arms because these people, in their minds, they're gonna. And if you're going to several out of the city, you don't go 76. You bypass. And they're going, we're going to lose business. So, it's such a grown exponentially. You have a lot of retirees that go there, and so now it's just a phenomenon into itself.
It really is.
It's really interesting, So we look at it as her father said, well, you know, the Branson tail is now wagging the Springfield dog. And when we were growing up, it was an offshoot of the music scene here, and just it was a lot neater actually in some ways, especially for the dam went in, because the other thing was the White River was known, and Branson and Forsyth was known as nationally as a destination for fishermen, floating fishing. And they had a big business on floating the river from all over. And I wish I would have been old enough then to floated the White River before the dam went in.
Yeah.
But, you know, whatever. I could go on.
So, what's kept you right here in Springfield?
Well, we lived in Nashville for almost 10 years.
Wow.
And
when was that?
99 to 2006.
Wow.
We were down there for the millennial. Is that right?
Went to the big party Tim and Faith had.
In Nashville, I could see why it's kind of, you could even compare it to Branson in a different way. It's become a destination.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Branson morphed out of being a music, Highway 76 Country Music Boulevard, into a destination, a place to buy a little place on the lake or retire to.
Mm-hmm.
Nashville, you've got all kinds of not only music people but media personalities relocating. It's becoming the place.
Mm-hmm.
Austin is another one. So you have some hot spots. Kansas City's growing really well. St. Louis is just losing people.
Okay.
So 10 years from now, you're going to see the landscape of this country. You're going to have hot and cold areas.
Wow.
And Nashville is going to be hot. And it will probably be a media start taking over media central from West Coast and wherever, New York, whatever. But at any rate, we loved Nashville, and it was great to be there at the time period, but it's growing so fast now. You're talking 100 people a day, and some of those people are very successful people. You don't go there if you're poor. You got to have a means, and it's not all expensive, but it's more so than here.
Mm-hmm.
And so what brought us back here was our parents. Jaynie's mother was getting older, and my mother was too, and we didn't have the kind of success that we were looking for. We loved it in Nashville. I loved the co-writes and the writing that I did there.
Oh, yeah.
There were days I'd sit around and play for maybe 5 hours a day, and after 40 years, my fingers, I had good calluses, but there were days that my hand would hurt at the end of the day because I played so much. And that was all good. I mean, it was great. But so we came back, and I'm glad we did. It's Springfield and the area it has a sense of security about it, and there's a mystique, and I don't know if I can explain it exactly, that the area has.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, once they're here, they don't want to leave.
Yeah. What makes the Arkansas Ozarks and Missouri Ozarks special?
To me?
Yeah.
Part of it's the geography.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's what defines it. I think probably also we have the opportunity to have a lot of influences here.
Okay.
We're not, in other words, New Yorkers have a lot of New York influence.
Okay.
New Orleans people have a lot of New Orleans influence, or what have you. But
Yes.
if you're in the Midwest, Kansas City would be an example. Then you can absorb all of it. You can take what you want,
Mm-hmm.
or you can discard what you want.
Mm-hmm.
I can go from, especially when I was in college, I'd be talking about my hypothesis in action, or I can talk about overalls. I can in the next moment be totally hillbilly and talking about, you know, Joe Smith over there used to run dogs or deer with his coon dogs. I could carry on that conversation real comfortably.
Uh-huh.
Or I can talk, you know, like they do in New York, you know. You know.
Yeah.
I understand New York people, but I wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
It's not so bad. It wasn't so bad that it was great that it is when you can leave after about 3 days. But, you know. So what's great, I think, is location, as the realtors say, because we're kind of sheltered here.
We are.
And we're a long way off from, I hope, trouble.
Yeah.
So by the time it gets here, I used to hate that
Okay.
when I was young and wanted to go to San Francisco. And
Yes.
be, you know, tie-dye everything, because in the 60s and early 70s, it would take 2 years for trends to get here from
Wow.
the coast. It would.
Wow.
Before they would wear bell bottoms or their hair long.
Yeah.
It would be 2 years. You could set your calendar before people in this area would start to adopt what had been going on in the coast or the larger cities
Yeah.
for 2 years.
And we're in the big city here. I'm sure it's so much even
Well,
longer.
the
in
thing is now, like my
little
dad,
tiny towns.
my dad knew when they first sent up satellites, he was
Uh-huh.
giddy. The thing that's different now is communication
Yeah.
and cable and worldwide.
Social media.
Worldwide awareness. We're not just talking about the country, we're talking about the world now.
Yeah.
So if you want to, you can be in the middle of nowhere wearing your overalls and spitting tobacco and watching news from London.
Yeah.
So you have there's no excuse for not being somewhat sophisticated.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that kills regionalism, which is,
Yes, certainly.
I like regionalism, but it's, I think, a dying thing eventually,
Yes.
because everybody starts to sound the same or the same. And it used to be good in New Orleans, and it's like, oh, these people don't do what we do.
Yeah.
And what they didn't do in Joplin, what Springfield did.
Wow.
You know.
That's crazy to think about.
Well, when we again on that Joplin, the first time I played a steady club gig,
Uh-huh.
when I was 21, all summer, 9 to 1, little club. They came out every night of the week and filled the club. Springfield, at that time,
Okay.
you hardly had anybody during the week. It was a Friday night town. Some nights are Friday night, or some cities are Friday night towns. Some cities are Saturday night towns.
Okay.
This is still a Friday night town.
Okay.
You're going to have a better crowd on Friday night, I guarantee you.
Wow.
Still is.
Wow.
And why, I don't know.
Who knows?
Yep.
But Joplin,
Friday night,
every
late
night, every
Yeah.
night was Friday night. I couldn't believe it. I was like,
Wow.
well, just an hour down the road. But no, any rate,
Yeah.
the Ozarks, I think, is a great place to be.
Yeah.
And I enjoy every bit of it.
I forgot to ask, how did you come up with the name the Ozark Mountain Daredevils?
I think our harmonica player, he was wrote a lot of lyrics for us.
Okay.
And was imaginative in that way, and We used to, yeah. So it's something. Originally, it was Cosmic Corn Cob
What?
and his amazing Ozark Mountain Daredevils.
What?
And it was a joke.
Yeah.
So what we used to do as writers, which was another fun thing, we would just make up band names and make up stuff that we never intended to do anything with.
Yeah.
Just as a kind of a game, we sit around and make up titles or play. We had at any rate. I could go on forever, but so we just make up goofy titles.
Yeah.
And so a band name that I think our harmonica, I'm pretty sure, he popped out of his thought process was Cosmic Corn Cob and his amazing Ozark Mountain Daredevil. It's like a sideshow. Right?
Yeah.
Another name we had was Perry Allen and his coughing dogs.
Oh. That sounds so cute.
Then we used to call ourselves, we nicknamed ourselves the Ducks
Okay.
because we felt like we were innocent. You know, ducks are not too guilty of too much.
No. Just being cute.
At any rate, no, but at any rate, so we had to change, we had to come up with something. And,
Yeah.
And so one day he said, well, I think the only thing we ever thought was good was the Ozark Mountain Daredevils. And I'm going, I don't even remember that. And we all just went, okay.
Okay. I just love that it represents the Ozarks.
Well, that's helpful
Yeah.
in there.
And it's so helpful for our region.
You know, I think without even thinking about it, it was a good marketing ploy.
Yes. It's alluring
Sets
to
it
think about the
Well, it
Ozarks.
sets it apart.
Yeah, certainly.
And, you know, we probably should have really focused on that more.
Okay.
More hillbilly rock and harmonicas, if
Okay.
you will. Probably. That's the way we probably should have done a show.
Okay.
And so automatically we would get ourselves to a level and we would come out, doesn't matter who we're playing with, we're these guys and this is ours, right?
Yes.
Now the other thing about making records, or if you have hits, is you've got to follow yourself. You're
Yes.
not trying to follow the Eagles' last hit, you're following yours.
Yeah.
So the pressure folds right back into your lap.
Yeah.
And so you just gotta get close.
Yeah.
And as writers, they're pretty independent. And the other mistake I would say, and I'm guilty, is writers like to, like I say, do some diverse things, songs.
Okay.
They also want to hear everything. You want to hear, I'm guilty of wanting to hear strings on some of my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily Ozark
Right.
Mountain Daredevil stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what you think of.
Mhm.
So songwriters tend to get too serious, and they tend to want to hear everything in the kitchen sink on some songs. It's not a good idea from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah.
It may make you happy, you know, but you got to reach a compromise between what makes you happy and what makes your audience happy.
Oh
don't
yeah,
you?
the people.
Oh, there are those people out there. I'd say I'm done.
Well, that was just perfect.
Yeah, I tend to be that way.
Thank you for giving so much insight into our region and your life.
Oh
and-
gosh, don't ask me to remember that. It's a good thing you recorded it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well.
I say it differently every time.
Oh my goodness. Well, this has been lovely.
Thank you.
And it's been another edition of Songs of the Ozarks. Thank you so much, Mr. Randle.
You're welcome.